Thank you for tuning in to this today's training around how to set up a Braille testing session for students on RISE. My name is Tracy Gooley, and I am the Special Education Assessment Specialist who oversees all of our accommodations and accessibility within our RISE testing. So the first thing we're going to do is when you go to set up a test, the first thing you're going to do will be to make sure you get into Tide and set the student's Braille settings. You're going to want to turn on Braille in Tide, and then you're also going to want to make sure that you set the Braille code in which the student will need to use, whether that is UEB technical or UEB with Nemeth math code. From there, setting up a testing session, we're going to demo it today using training tests. But it will mimic and look the same during actual live testing. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go to the Utah RISE portal, and that's just utahrise.org. Then from here, you will see we have a couple different places here. We're going to go to training tests here and open up our training test window. And we also need test administration. So we're going to open up two different windows for the purposes of today. So the teacher will first need to log in to actual Tide to initiate that session. And we're going to split the screen here. So on the one side, we have our test administration screen where we will activate our new test sessions. And then over here, we're going to go ahead and on training tests or during the live sessions, right, this would be your student's computer with the student portal or the student secure browser. So we're going to go into training for the purposes of today. You can actually do a training test with your kiddos. You can actually log in and practice a training test underneath your actual student's name. So once you go into Tide and set those settings, you can go in here and actually log your student into training tests, and it should carry over into that training test, the settings that you have in there. But for today's purposes, we're going to stay as a guest user. In order to do the Braille, you will want to toggle this to a guest session. And what we're going to do over here is we're just going to start a new session in our test administrator site. And we're going to go ahead and open up a Braille test, and we're going to go ahead and we'll do a math Braille test today. So I'm going to click on that, and it will get this green button down here, Start Training Session. So we'll click there, and I'll get my training ID to plug in over here on my student's computer. And it is Train 99 FC-2. So once I sign in, if I was signing in under my student, the student settings would pop in. But for today's purposes, we'll go ahead and just do a 5th grade math. And all of our training tests are not broken out by grade levels. So it's the test items in here are various grade levels. The idea behind using training tests would be to just get yourself as the test administrator and possibly the student in rhythm with how this will work during live testing. So we'll click Start Braille. And then as you click Start on the student's computer, it will send the approval over here to the test administrator. So we'll click on that, and we'll open up that we can see here. Here's our guest session that we're starting. And we're going to go ahead and click on the green one. And then you'll see over here, it brings over my instructions. So we can begin the test now. During the actual test, the summative spring testing window, what I do suggest, because Braille will deliver down in batches, it will come down either by passage sets within ELA, or math will deliver down anywhere from like 12 to 16 items at a time. So I do suggest science, I think, comes down, it's 1 or 2 clusters at a time for science. I would suggest that before you sit down and start testing with your student, that you actually go in, you can do this without the student there, log into the student's testing session and initiate that first print request so that you can actually emboss and print out the first group of all of those tests so that you've got those in place and ready in hard copy for the student when you sit down to do your first testing session. So you'll see here, we actually, because it's a Braille test, my print icon just automatically generated itself. Otherwise, what you can do is click on this menu button up here and just click on print item, and that will also send that request to the test administrator site. So you want to make sure that when you log in to this test, the test administrator site, you do this on the computer that has your Braille software that you'll emboss from. So my initiated request has come in, so I'm going to open up Braille, and you'll see here that for the practice test, they did 3 items at a time. But during the actual testing session, you'll see all of your first batch of items drop in. Now, one thing to note, if you notice here, it tells me, right? So I've got item 1 is a BRF file. And if you notice, they're kind of out of order here. Item 2 has popped in below, and that's my PRN file. And then item 3 is a BRF. So as you move through and print each individual item, I do suggest labeling in pencil or somewhere on the corner of that page which item that presents to, and then you could compile those in a book. But that way it just helps you keep in order how those items come. So what we're going to do, I don't have software on my computer, so I can't actually print these items, but you can see the action here. So if I want to print my first item, I'm going to click on the green check mark. And the file name is guest 1. Okay. And then what you'll see is it'll actually deliver down, right, this BRF file here. So on your computer, when you click on this BRF file, it should open up and allow you to print within the software. I don't have the software, so it won't open for me. You will definitely make sure that you want to refer to the assistive technology manual in the Braille section prior to engaging these print sessions, because it will walk you through all the settings that you need within Tiger Designer and your Bosser to be successful in printing these. So what you would do is you just open up that file. You can choose to save it if you would like, or you can just automatically print from there. If you save the item, please just note once you have embossed it and the student has completed that item, you just need to delete it, right? It is secure testing materials. So then you'll just proceed forward and print each item, emboss it as it comes out. Now, let's say, for example, I went ahead on item 1. I went to print the first item and it didn't work, or it didn't emboss correctly, and I need to go in and change some setting. Well, if you notice, it's not in my queue anymore. So if at any point I needed to come back and reprint, I can come back to that item. You'll only be able to do this, right, for that first item within that set, because the way the adaptive algorithm runs is once your student answers question number 1, it will automatically run that algorithm to determine should the student receive the next item at like the same level, DOK, or higher or lower. That's how the algorithm runs. But if I wanted to reprint an item, I can just reinitiate this print item, and you'll see that it's been sent to the test administrator. And I click OK, and what should happen is you'll see that item 1 drop back in, probably at the bottom of the queue. It may be at the top. So just give it a second. You should see it. It's thinking. It's blinking. I may have to close it, and then we can just re-hit. Oh, okay. So if you close it and then click on print again, you'll see it drops back in. So I can reprint it if I need to. But so let's say, okay, we print item 1. Okay. And let's say we print item 2 and we print item 3. So we get all those done. So then I've got them all printed. I sit down, I start testing. My student gets through item 1. So as this works, it is expected that you as a test administrator, whether you're a TVI or a teacher, however you determine to do this, it's expected that you'll enter the student's answer option. So like the student will verbally tell you what the answer is. So as you'll notice, as we, for every question that I start answering, additional Braille items will drop into my print queue here. So for example, we'll just throw some numbers in here. So my student answers the first question. I'm going to hit next, and they move on to question number 2. If I open back up my print, you'll see item 4 has dropped in. So as your student answers questions, it will start dropping the next item into the queue for you. So then we'll just answer question 2. We'll see if that pops in. Question 3. And it's counting out for you how far we're going along. So as you can see, if I open up now, I should have my next 2 items. Okay, so yep. So my next couple items have started to drop in. So you can kind of see how that process works. You can choose to, when you get to the end of the testing session, you can choose to kind of print these items as you go if you would like, or you can complete a batch at a time and come in and pre-print the next batch. Either one is totally fine. So students can pause at any point, get out and come back in and re-engage. So that's how you set up a testing session. So it's definitely get into the training tests and practice this. So you can see today I kind of set it up without having a student in place, but you can also plug your student settings in and look at it that way as well. So if you have any questions further around setting up testing sessions, what does it look like when we engage Braille tests, and if you need to contact me for anything, you can find my contact information on the special education webpage, and it's under the special education assessment, accommodations and accessibility. You can link to this from the assessment webpage, or you can just, if you go to schools.utah.gov, USB, and click on departments, over under S is special education services. And then my page is the first one here, accessibility, accommodations, and assessment. And you'll find my contact info here. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. You can find all of your resources for RISE back on that RISE portal. And if you go to resources and click on user guides, here's where you'll find the assistive technology manual. So this will be one that you'll want to kind of bookmark or save, remember to come back to. So within this manual, it will walk you through Braille, right? Testing with assistive technology for Braille tests, walks you through how to set up JAWS. That is the recommended screen reader to use, but you can use NVDA if needed. JAWS is the only one that will work most appropriately for ELA tests. But you can click here and it walks you through all how to set up JAWS. Again, here's my contact information, and Emily as well. She helps with all the embossers and software. And then you'll just notice here, students are also able to use refreshable Braille devices if necessary. Here's the different software. We provide you with Tiger Suite, but there is some additional software that should be able to work for printing. And then just some specifications around JAWS, setting that up, applying settings. So whether you're doing, everything will print in contracted Braille. So you'll want to make sure that you're set up in your JAWS for that contracted Braille. So just some different things there with JAWS. And then as you keep going, like here's how to set up and configure your BRF and PRN files using Tiger Designer, or Duxbury also works well. And then keep going, administering Braille tests. So there's a whole section that starts on page 36 that kind of walks you through sort of what we did today. Setting those test setting sessions for the student. Here's what TIDE looks like when you go in and you turn on that the student needs Braille. So you just navigate that on. Zoom this in just a little bit. And then you can set the Braille type that the student needs. We also suggest that you should set it for items and stimulus. I would not choose one or the other. I would choose both. And then some additional components come into play here. So that assistive technology manual is a very handy manual. So that if I go back to my user guides here, you'll also want to make sure that you look at the TIDE user guide will help you how to set Braille, but the test administration also should have a section in here on those print requests and Braille requests. So if you need to refer back to that, you can come back here and learn how to initiate the print request option. So those will be the two manuals that you'll want to refer back to. So thank you for joining today, and hopefully that gave you a little bit more information so you can move forward in RISE testing and be successful. And please don't hesitate to reach out via email if you have any questions or need some additional assistance.